Morning, everybody. We are back. It's Tuesday, and thankfully, my good brother Lonnie did indeed make it to the podcast today. And I can guarantee you one thing that he will not stand in the way of you encountering God in any way, shape, form, or fashion. In fact, it more than likely what will happen is that you will find yourself right in there amongst the saints. So we're gonna have a discussion with him this morning, kind of along the lines of the topic. But I want, as people to understand how this platform normally goes, right? The topic is there, it's given, but I never know what it's gonna be, where it's gonna go. I have no idea. And you guys should be used to that by now. I'm hoping you should be used by that by now. So what we're gonna do first is I'm gonna bring Lonnie up, and then we're going to show you a little clip of a project that he's doing in Uganda. And I'm hoping one day to go with him actually out there to help out with that stuff. So we'll get you to watch that, and then we'll get into the discussion today. So please welcome to Straight Talk, Mr. Lonnie Good. Morning, brother.
Hey, thanks, Marlon.
Hey, awesome. I'm glad you made it. Really glad you made it.
Yeah, you know that I felt a little bit of reluctance, just felt like I was unprepared or whatever. But once I turned the corner, it's like, wow, I love this topic. I love what you're doing. And thank you so much for letting me be a part of it.
Oh, you were one of the Kickstarters, bro. You just may not realize it, but you helping me understand more about what the kingdom life actually is was the linchpin to making everything just kind of turn for the good. So no pun intended. Turn for the good. So we're gonna watch your video real quick. It is about 4 minutes 11 seconds long. So guys, just watch it all the way through, and I'll ask you a couple of questions about it too to make sure you give an update about where things are with it.
Yeah.
And
we made this one. This ad or this little video clip is probably, I don't know, 6 months maybe. But we have made some more progress since then, so that would be a good to update it.
11 months old.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah. Time flies.
Man, I'm telling you.
So here it is, guys. Just listen.
Hi, I'm Lonnie Good. I want to offer you the opportunity of a lifetime to come and to participate in real, measurable, meaningful change. Our lives, they fly by with relatively few projects that are truly rewarding. It's not because there are no projects out there, but it's because we fail to act on the opportunities that are around us all the time. For those of you who know us, Teresa and I, we began helping a small village in Lukwanga, Africa in 2017. The effort began with providing mosquito nets and quickly grew into a clean water project, which turned into many others, including shoes for children, some chicks to raise that would eventually provide 130 eggs per day. One thing turned into another as people joined with us. And then the impossible happened. Our good friend Kato Edward, who's a founder of Lukwanga Children's Aid, asked us a question. He said, "What do you think? Can we build a school?" Well, the question was answered when enough money was raised to purchase a piece of ground and a lot of bricks. And one by one, those bricks were laid, roofs were built, and not just one building were constructed, but 2 classroom buildings, a teacher's administration building, a kitchen, and a bathroom facility with running water. Initially, there was just a handful of students, but numbers have grown from a dozen to over 150 students attending Faith Heart School. 50 students are fully funded, and 100 are in need of sponsorship. We are at another juncture in this amazing journey. We need more bricks. The campaign that we are now launching is to construct a 3-story dorm and classroom building to house our older students and to decrease the risk of domestic violence and drug abuse. The need is great. Our lives were forever changed when we visited Luquenga for the first time in November of 2019 to see those beautiful children sleeping on dirt floors and without the very basic of necessities like running water, beds, and a choice of food. It was a real jolt to our American life. All of this has happened in the last 6 years. Within that time, we launched our nonprofit in order to help facilitate this effort. You can access us at achildsprayer.net. It's .net because that's how all this began. It began with the mosquito nets. On the website, you can see what our loyal sponsors have done, one brick at a time, one child at a time. It's hard to explain the rich rewards that come with causing such life change to those who are at the bottom and just need a hand. They just need a little help. The children are eager to learn. They are eager to participate. They are eager to grow. What a sight it was to see the children carrying bricks to build their very own school, a symbol of hope and a symbol of a future, none of which would have happened without a few people saying, I want to help. Please consider being a part of Faith Heart School. Click the link below to learn more about this amazing journey and how you can make a huge impact on the lives of these precious children. Or go to achildsprayer.net. Blessings.
Now, when we first showed that, that was 10 months ago now.
Wow.
Because I think that video had only been dropped a month before we decided to have a conversation online. It's been a minute since we've had a conversation.
Yeah.
I think the first time we were in the lobby, Awaken, and I said, let's do it. And then we took a picture, and that was the thumbnail for it. So what's the status right now of that school?
Well, we got the third building up, so there's another, I think, 4 classrooms in that building. We didn't get, we had dreams of having that 3-story structure, but we didn't have enough funds to do that, and so we didn't want to lose the students that are aging out, and so it's kind of a stopgap. But we did another building, so we got more room, and now we have 20 staffers, 20 full-time teachers, people that help with the facility, and over 200 students. So it continues to grow. It just continues to blow my mind. And one of the things I didn't say in there is this is such a grassroots thing. There's no middle, there's no administration fees. There's nobody anywhere in the chain using anything that comes in for this for anything other than Faith Heart School. Everything that comes in goes directly to those children, and it's mind-boggling. When we went over there, we saw just how, I'll use the word pure, the work was, and I hope and pray to God that it continues to stay that way, because it's such a beautiful thing. Such a beautiful thing. Those children wrecked me. I went there. I probably shared with you the story where when my bride said she's going to go over there and find out what have I got myself involved in here. And I'm like, oh, great. I got to go to Uganda, protect my bride, And I went there and I was wrecked. The love that those children shared, the joy, everything about it. That's it, man. I know that we'll continue to be a part of this probably until we're not here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's so rich and so rewarding when you see something of such value and something that is changing not only the lives of those children, but ultimately is going to change that country. Overall. It's changing the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because one life affects another life, whether that be adversely or positively. Um, we were told that the children are of very vital importance to the kingdom, and not just because of who they are, but because of the type of heart we're supposed to possess. And I guess the best way to see it would be to watch little children interact. I mean, I watch firsthand Christoph interacting with you, and it's the it makes sense to see the pictures, and I can see it in real life. I can understand that there is a connection there somewhere in who you are to the younger generation. So I'm happy that this is working out. Um, when I first approached you about this topic, I'm going to let people know, because this is the transparent channel. He was very trepidatious about the topic and unsure. Um, but like I assured you, this venture is not a numbers game. It is not a effort for a popularity contest. I think what has happened today in the church is that we have forgotten the church and we've forgotten Christ, and we've no longer pushed his agenda. We've pushed ours. And I want this platform to be a arrow back to what it's supposed to be for us as believers. We are not called to be flair. We're not called to be flashy. We're not called to be loved by the world. We're called to be completely the opposite. We're told we were going to be hated by the world, so blending in is not an option. We were told that we were going to be shunned, so trying to be accepted is not an option. And we were told to be simple, so flashy is not an option. And so all three of those things, I think, culminate into what the real church should actually be. But the topic of forsaking the assembly has always popped up with people who are both religious and non-religious. For the non-religious, it's to hit you over the head, and then for the religious, it's to hit you over the head, but for completely different reasons. One is to tell you you're not as good of a Christian as me, and the other one is say you're not a Christian. But I wanted to have you on simply because you were this first stepping stone that God put in my way to understand what the true church was and is supposed to be. And while you didn't see that in the background, that's really what it was. So I want to read the passage in Hebrews about that, and I think we can glean a little bit more from the verse than people like to talk about. So we're going to read Hebrews, and if you guys want to know what the referencing is, this is in chapter 10, okay? But we're going to start from verses 19 onward, because the one they like to quote is 25, but we're going to get the pretext first so we can understand exactly what this is about. Therefore, brethren, having boldness to enter the holiest by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way, which he consecrated for us through the veil, that is his flesh, and having a high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as in the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. Now, Lonnie and I were talking backstage, and I didn't get him to flesh out his viewpoint on what I had said. I'm going to repeat what I said to him, and then we'll go into it. My viewpoint on this is that, and I don't know if I can say, I don't want to say my viewpoint. What I got from it is that it is not talking about attendance tracking. This is not about the checklist of saying, I went to church today, or I went to I met with everybody on Sunday, and I go every Sunday, so I don't forsake the assembly. That is not what it's talking about from what I've gleaned, because I don't see this as being one of those regimented statements of get together every Sunday. It told you about the times. It told you what's coming. It encouraged you to not leave each other without encouragement. It's telling you to not be alone in this walk, and don't be like some others who decided they're just going to do their own thing, They don't need to encourage and they don't need to join up. They're just going to be a loner. This is a group effort because you need, it's called a body for a reason. Everything has a use, the fingers, the toenails, even down to eyelashes and eyebrows. Everything has a function. And look, I look at little things like, say, the eyebrow. Most people don't even think that it has a function, but it keeps sweat out your eyes. The same secondary wicking that the eyelashes do. They keep dust. It's these little things that we don't necessarily think of, but every part has a function. And when we try to make one part more important than the other, we forsake the body. So, what's your viewpoint about that particular scripture? What did you get from it?
Well, when I first heard you say, it wasn't about church, I initially was like, oh boy, this is going to be fun. Because I guess it should, how you're defining it, not about meeting the numbers. Absolutely, 100%. It's not about that. I love what it said about learning how to spur one another on to love and to good deeds. It is about the church,
The
which
church.
there's only one.
Mm-hmm.
I wish people would get that in their minds and understand that there is only one church. There's many organizations and denominations, but there's only one church of the true and living God. And that is what we are not to forsake. And I can't tell you, when I thought about this topic, my mind was reeling, and the importance, because when you go on to the next verse, it talks about when you do step away from that, the real, what we're talking about here, when you step away from the real, the possibility of apostasy is very real. And if you don't know apostasy, it's like you're lost. And then I think about people that have stepped away from interacting with fellow believers or with believers. Maybe they were on the fringes and hadn't fully surrendered. And you see them do this very thing. I can think of people that they're apostate. They're lost. And I hope and I pray that they can turn around, that God will have mercy on them and bring them back to their senses. But I've seen this. I've seen when people step away from interacting with the body, being a part. And that does not mean, unfortunately, being a part of a religious organization. It means being a part of God's church.
Yeah, indeed. And that statement is saying exactly what you're saying. And this is the unfortunate truth about today's version of what they call the church. And we've had multiple conversations over the last 2 weeks, people, about this idea of what is the church and how the church today has left Christ completely out. So they're now social gatherings. They're a sorority. They're a clique. They're like AA meetings, and you don't really, but AA meetings with alcohol. So it's not even that you're trying to avoid it. You just say that I've gone to it, and you tell everybody else that you go. But in the actual meeting, you do everything but what you're supposed to be there for. And it's called religion, but it's not the religion of the heart. This is a religion of the flesh, and this is what church has become. Not the church has become. What people's definition of the church is now is the checklist, the do's, the don'ts, the leader, the band, the money, the auditorium, the parking lot, all these superficial things that I guess the best way is like going fishing with all the good equipment, and you only come away with a minnow. You got billions of dollars in fishing gear, the best boat, like the gnarliest bass boat there is, and you got one of the strongest rods and some of the most alluring lures and bait out the wazoo and everything, and you step out and you look like you must be high-end fisherman, and you don't know how to operate any of the equipment. And you just do what you see everybody else doing, and you throw it out in the water, and you're there, and you feel it's a little tug, and you're thinking, I'm a man, I caught a big one. And you pull it out, it's like a fish that big. And you go around parading to everybody, I caught a fish, all because of all my equipment. And then they ask you, do you even know how to catch fish? Well, I have all the equipment. Now, that wasn't a question, though, but do you know how to catch fish? Oh, I'm sure the equipment will do it for me. That's become church. If I have all the stuff to lure people in, I have the best music, I have the best parking lot, I have the wonderful car, I'm dressing really nice, I can tell them what they want to hear. That's not fishing for men. That's fishing for compliments. It's fishing for likes and for. It's crazy to me that we've come away from this verse and seen assembling as a gathering of just random people with no God intent.
I think that when you say that, that's one of the problems is that they don't dig the expositories. I went back and looked at some of the theologians' notes on this passage, and they're so deep, they're so rich, and I don't see that coming from the stages of any churches anymore. I don't see that deep understanding, that deep digging. I see superficial stuff. There's a really good analogy about the fishing, because I went fishing yesterday, and just down across the road is the Methow River, and the Methow River, you're not allowed to use bait, and the only thing you can fish for at this time of year is whitefish. And I used to catch whitefish. I used to catch my fill of whitefish, but I could use bait. But over here was a different story. I didn't catch anything. I totally new learning experience for me. I know how to catch fish, but I got to go back and try again and try some new techniques. But that was a good analogy.
We go so far away from God that we expect Him to show up in on. And we talked about this yesterday, and for those who don't remember, we talked about this going away from God but expecting all His perks. We and that's how we see Him too, by the way, as a perk giver. It is no longer about having His presence, whether that be in perks or despair or hardship. It's just we just want His presence. That's no longer the case. People have now branded His presence as everything positive. And I don't mean that He is not positive. They look at His presence and base it on, oh, I have money, I have blessings, I have health, and this is all that He wants me to have. When He's completely promised you the exact opposite in life. People gonna hate you. The poor will always be with you. You're gonna be persecuted. They're gonna put you to death. He's telling you everything antithetical to what the current church is telling you. But then they'll tell you, don't forsake this. And what exactly are you assembling to do? To remind me of a lie that is no longer what I should be living? You're trying to keep me in this rut of dependency on what you have to say. You're not directing me to the cross. You're not directing me to the Bible. You're not directing me to God. You're directing me to the pulpit. And that's what we've become. We've become this generation of people. And this is, I guess, this is where the Bible talks about the itching ear syndrome. You're directing me to somebody else outside of God, and you have now become my God. And that is a big problem for us to overcome, but not really when we start to individually. This is why in the week is vital, people. This is why it's important that during the week you connect with God, so that on a Sunday or a Wednesday or whatever day you gather together, you are bringing something to impart, to encourage each other to good works. Otherwise, you're coming only to glean. What was a leech? You're a leech now. You're not a brother. You're a leech. It may sound harsh, but when you become a leech, you know what they have to do, right? They take a knife and they get under there and they work it free, and the leech is gone. Don't that ain't what He's called us to. And I did have one question for you along these lines here. You told me backstage that you had a story that you wanted to tell people about this particular issue. If you want to go ahead and expound on that real quick.
I would love to.
And you can take your time. There's no rush. I don't have a song, and I don't have kids in the nursery waiting to get picked up. So
okay, it's real a dichotomy that you put out there, that we have our religious institutions. We got our state-sanctioned 501c3 nonprofit organizations, and then within those, you have people that are truly seekers, truly followers of Christ, truly blood-bought, born again, transforming day by day in these places. And so it's important that you do bring your game, just like you said. But bringing your game is simply being immersed, being who God has called you to be, and then interacting with that, interacting with others who, it isn't like you've got to come and do what they say. It's you need to do what God tells you to do. You need to be who God wants you to be. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story. And I thought, wow, okay, this is very apropos. I would start it by saying that there was this young man, but obviously the young man was me. And he had fallen out of fellowship. So there's a time in our lives, in our spiritual growing, that we see the church as a place to be, to grow. And if it were not for the church, if it were not for the people that loved God, that loved people, I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here. And now we're saying we see some problems in these religious institutions, and there are. So anyway, there was a time in my life that I fell away. I was a young man. I was in my teens when I just kind of went on my own road and was sucked into the stuff around me, the stuff of the world. And I knew better, but I couldn't seem to find my way out of, name it, drugs, sexual activity, just everything that the world embraces, and is fine. It's all legal. It's all good. And it wasn't good. And it had gone on for years, and I was married and had children. My marriage was in a state of disarray. My life was in a state of disarray. Everything was wrong. Nothing was right. And I was powerless. And sometimes I think about the passage that says that the only people that come to God are those who he draws. Mm-hmm. So there's a time that he will let you go, I believe, and let you, he's always there. He's constantly protecting, but access to his spirit, access to his presence is not there because you're living your own way. You're doing your own thing instead of his thing. And I couldn't find my way back. I was driving truck, and this particular day I was up on top of Snoqualmie Pass, and I was bumping all my tires before I headed down the pass. It was a big truck. We were like over 100,000 pounds, over 75 feet long. It's a big deal. I love driving truck, but I was bumping my tires and just doing my thing. And there's this car, a white El Camino, 60 something, come pulling into that place where we would pull our rigs off. And I could see that he was going to roll his window down, like he wanted to talk to me. I don't know. It was obvious it was me. He pulled in front of my truck and he was looking at me, rolled his window down. So I just stepped over there to see what he wanted. Wow. Was I not ready for this? He rolls his window down. And the first thing he says, I didn't want to stop. I got some stuff to do in Seattle, but God told me to stop and talk to you. What? In my heart of hearts, I feel this distance from God that I've longing to be a part of that. And this man rolls his window down in the middle of nowhere and says, God told me to stop and talk to you. I'm like, what is this, Satan come to really mess with me now? I mean, I'm so far away from the Lord, and yet my heart was crying out, what? And he said, and he opened his door. He said, I want to, he looked at me, he says, are you a Christian? And in my heart, I'm like thinking, I might've been once, what's it to you? That was how hard I was, how hard my heart was. And yet my heart was crying out. And he opened his door and he had his Bible open there. He said, can I read a passage to you? And he read this parable about the sower and the seed, and the good seed and the good ground, and the seed that got stolen away. And then the dude wanted to pray with me. I can't tell you how conflicted I was. I'm a man. I got a hammer in my hand and I'm thumping my big tires on my big truck and I'm driving down the big road. I'm a big guy. And this guy pulls up and I'm weeping. He wants to pray with me. What is going on? and my heart went out, and I took his hand, I prayed with him. And our meeting was brief. It was very short. That was it. And he took off, and I cried all the way down the mountain. And when I got home, I ran home, and I took my wife, and I said, "We need to go to church. You need to know the Lord." I was overwhelmed with God's mercy, his grace, his presence. And the first thing that I knew I needed to do was to be in fellowship. I needed to, and so we went to the church, the last one that I knew of, and the pastor was a good pastor. He loved me, and he spent time with me. He invested in me, and I knew that he loved me because of the things that he did, because he was real. He invested in me, invested his time, his care, his concern, and it wasn't marking off a checkbox. He was a good pastor. And so I tell that story because the importance of fellowship, it was the first thing on my agenda when God called me back and said, "It's time for you to get back on track." And I told God, I will fall forward now. I will never fall back. I will never turn around. I will never do my own thing again, ever, 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 ever. I will walk forward. And the importance of fellowship, it's one of the most important things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you and your bride came up the other day, you came and visited our little church, and that was great. But the fellowship that happened, and just you making that choice to come and to partake, and for us to interact with one another, being brothers, being part of the body of Christ, that's the gold, man.
That's the diamonds. And I told people this yesterday, the refreshing of one spirit, but just by interacting. It's not like we spoke anything profound, or you gave me some anointing oil on my head and did some kind of a candelabra kind of service over me. It was just spirits speaking to spirits about the spirit giver. That is all it was. It was our interaction the way he wanted it to be, which is one-on-one time with each other, reflecting on what he has done for us and what he wants for us. And as you were talking, he dropped this verse on me. This was you in that truck. "Likewise, the Spirit also helps in our weakness, for we do not know what we should pray for. We do not know what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit himself makes intercession for us with groanings that cannot be uttered. Now he who searches the heart knows what the mind of the Spirit is, because he makes intercession for the saints according to the will of God." You're sitting in your truck, and this random dude just shows up, knows exactly what to say, even though you don't know. And when it finally comes out, then you realize this is what it was I was yearning for.
Yeah.
I couldn't put it into words. There was no way for you to bring yourself to understand what your spirit needed, but the Holy Spirit did. And he went, and I have a suspicion that's probably how the eunuch felt.
Yeah.
He's there, but he doesn't really know where to go. He's just kind of there. And all of a sudden, Philip. And then all of a sudden, no Philip. It's like this dude just shows up, tells me something I needed to hear. I get baptized, and he's gone. He's just gone. So you got Philip, is what you did. You got Philip. You were the eunuch at the time, even though you don't think you were searching. Your heart was.
My heart was desperately lost, and I couldn't find my way back. And I think that there are a lot of people that are in that position that can't find their way back, and they don't know where to look, and the answers have not been found, maybe in a local assembly, but be it what it is still, you've got to persevere. You've got to press in. You've got to find that relationship. You've got to find people that really love God. You've got to find somebody that'll love you. You've got to be a part of the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a must. There's no getting around it
at all. And because the book said it's true. This is how it works. I can't expect to get up and my leg decides he doesn't want to join the body that day, and I got to walk around with one leg. The body doesn't function like that. Even when if I'm sitting on, and this might get a little too personal for folks, but you're on straight talk now. Get used to it. Um, you decide to go to the bathroom, but you decide that you're going to be on your phone. Not everybody should know where this is going, right? And before too long, you realize you've been sitting on the John for about a half hour. And then you remember you have an appointment you're supposed to be at, but you still have to go get dressed. So here you are now trying to get up, and your legs are saying, we can't do that right now. There's nothing supplying us right now. We are non-functioning. You're going to have to, over time, just kind of raise yourself and let the blood flow again, and then sit back down and then raise again, and sometimes stretch your feet. You know the process. Don't act like y'all don't know what I'm talking about. You shake one leg to try and get it to come back to feeling, and then you shake the other leg to get it back to feeling, and then you finally stand up because you've actually paid attention to the body parts that have been cut off from their use. This is exactly what the whole body has to move together. You don't just leave. I can't just get up and go with my legs just left on the toilet. I can't. I'm part of the body. They are part of what I need to do. So while I might be called to do something, there are certain body parts that need to come along with it. And when one isn't functioning, the rest of them come alongside to help bring it back to its healthy position. If that means lifting it up, stretching it out, shaking it free, some things have to happen for that body part to be in its functioning part mood. It has to happen. So you have the body of Christ. And sometimes we need to be together to have one person may come in and be like, I can't make it today. Things are just hard. This is where the rest of the body comes to shake him free from that numbness. So you can actually start functioning in that mood again. And the verse that I think of is this one. And this, mind you, we just talked about the fact that in the week is where, if it's Sunday that you meet, I'm not saying anything about that. We're not talking about that right now. But when you do come together, you have something to bring to the table. And you get that thing with one-on-one time with God. How is it then, brethren? Whenever you come together, each one of you has a psalm, has a teaching, has a tongue, has a revelation, has an interpretation. You don't get each one of these things doing nothing. You don't get that just by merit of being alive. You get that by spending time in your closet, on your knees, with him, communicating with him, having him download stuff. This is how you come together after having time with him. Let all things be done for edification, just like we're talking about. The whole function of the body is for edification. If anyone speaks in a tongue, we've talked about that before. Let there be two, or at the most three, each in turn, and let one interpret. But if there is no interpreter, let him keep silent in the church and let him speak to himself and to God. Even when you're doing this, the distraction of you being the focus is not there. The body itself functions together. It's together. The major part of the body is the heart. The biggest, most important muscle is the heart. But you don't see me going around telling everybody about the heart. The heart knows what it's supposed to do. If it stops pumping, everything shuts down. I die. Heart stops, you're done. They have to restart it. That's dies. I don't go around with the heart on the outside and pointing, this is my heart here. See that? No. But for some reason, this is exactly the opposite of what we do in the church. We consider somebody the heart of the church, and we point all attention to it. Look, I am the heart. He's the heart. Look at him. He is the heart. He's the heart. Yeah, look at the heart. That's not how the body functions. The heart is doing its thing. It's keeping everything sustained, but no one talks about it. It doesn't try to get all the attention. We at the church have now flipped it upside down. We've completely flipped it. And not only that, we've made somebody the heart when it should be Christ. We've now made the preacher the heart. We've made the The worship session, the heart. We've made everything but God the heart. He's no longer the focal point. He's no longer where we get our life source from. And if he stops, he stops. It's not even a big deal to us anymore. So whether we assemble or we don't assemble, it makes no difference because it's not about him anyway. Which is why you mentioned too the whole idea of this church hurt business, right? People get thrown out and become apostate. And it's not even like we can avoid it because we ourselves are apostate at that point because we don't have him. We have an idea of him. We have a version of God. We have a boxed up, prettified little thing, but it's not God. It's just this thing that we do. I'm a Christian. What does that mean? I know God. But what does that mean? God saved me. From what? Sin. What do you mean? They have nowhere to go with the statements. They can't explain to you relationship. They can't explain what he saved them from. They have no concept of what it means to have his spirit move in their life. They can't tell you. If you ask, and I've seen it firsthand, ask any random Christian that you know. Ask him something deep. Deep like this. What is God to you? Ask him something deep. Real deep. What is God to you? If he doesn't say, you mean, who is God to me? You get your answer. Well, God is the giver of this and God is this, and they'll give you all of the results that they want from God. They will never tell you the character of him. Have you ever realized that the majority of church people give you characteristics of God, but they give you the results, but never the characteristics of God? Isn't that kind of weird?
Characteristics of God.
Yeah, they never tell you who he is. They tell you what he does. They'll tell you all kinds of things about the what's, but never the who's. I don't understand that one, but I do understand that one because they don't focus on the who. They focus on the giving, the getting, the taking. They never give back. He found a book.
When you said that, I had my Bible sitting here, and I know that within my Bible case, I have this sheet that's been in here for years, and it's all the passages about the attributes of God.
You see that?
It's incomprehensible, self-existent, self-sufficient, eternal, infinite, immutable, omniscient, wise. I'm just all of the attributes of God. Such a great study for anybody to learn, understand who is God. Yeah.
Not what, and not what he can give you. Okay, so he blesses me. Okay, he woke me up this morning. He got me this job. He keeps the roof over my head. He does that for everybody, bro. Like everybody gets rain, everybody gets sun. You're not super special just because you wake up in the morning and think, I have rain in my house. No, that he gives that to everybody, just and unjust. Everybody gets that. Now, the portion of him, you won't know what it is until you know what you're experiencing. But nobody invests time anymore in finding out who God is, because the pulpit doesn't talk about it anymore. And I won't say every, because Sunday was an exception that I needed so badly. Almost every pulpit now is about what God can do for your benefit, what God can do to make your life better, make your life easier, make your life more happy.
What was the exception? What was different on Sunday?
He spoke all the time about getting into the presence of Jesus. The emphasis that entire service was getting before the throne. Not the appearance of I'm a Christian, but going before the one, getting to the one that gave you this life to begin with. Majority of churches don't do that anymore. Yeah, they don't usher you before the throne. They usher you before the pulpit. And now you're in front of the pulpit and listening to me. That's not what happened Sunday. When I tell you, I felt so awkward not having the traditional church. I had not realized how much I have let myself become what I know I ought not to be, which is going there for the event and not for the person.
Wow.
And Bob took us directly to the person.
So
Everything he said was about the person.
we probably should give people just a little bit of background. So Marlon and his beautiful wife came up and visited us this Sunday. And we recently relocated, came up into the Medhow Valley, and we couldn't fit back into the church that we thought we were going to. There was some politics and some stuff going down. It just didn't allow it. And we found ourselves at this little place called the Local Church. It used to be a restaurant. It still functions as a restaurant on Sunday morning when the pastor straps on an apron and cooks for his entire congregation. And then we'll do some worship. We'll sing with the kids, and then he'll share some word. But what I love about Bob is that he straps on an apron and he serves, because that's what we are to do. Who's the greatest in the kingdom of God? Who is the servant of all. And how do we know that? The scripture says the greatest is the servant of all. He who's serving. You're washing your feet, which was a big deal back in Jesus's day. They didn't have shoes like us, they had sandals. Their feet were always dirty, and so you would always wash somebody's feet. If they come into your house, you'd wash their feet for them, being a servant. And that has turned upside down in our religious organizations. We have this hierarchy, and it's fashioned after the world's hierarchy of this is pyramid where the big guy or the one guy is up on top and everybody else is down below. That's not the way the kingdom of God functions at all. At all. It's nothing like that. And that's one of the biggest deviations, is the hierarchical structure. So if you want to be, you need to find somebody to mentor you, to love you, find somebody that has a servant's heart, that is going to spend time with you to find out where it is that he can help you in your life, he or she or they. But it's not like Marlon has said, where you go and there's a show and you find yourself in front of the pulpit instead of in front of the Lord Almighty.
You know, I didn't even realize that Bob was anything close to the resident pastor there. And this is now, normally you can tell there's an air, and y'all can tell me if I'm lying. Okay. If you go to a church gathering, I bet you money you can pick out who the pastor is. I can bet you money you'll know exactly who the pastor of that church is, or at least somebody who calls themselves either the co-pastor or an elder or something like that. You can pick them out in a crowd because of either how they dress or how little interaction they have with people, or the kinds of interaction they have with people. I honestly thought when I met Bob, he was just one of the guys there that was cooking for the rest of the body. I didn't know anything. That Bob did not come across to me as a pastor type person. This is how I knew I was in for trouble, because I instantly bracketed people based on the current iteration of the church. I went in, not even realizing I went in looking for that hierarchy. And it got completely obliterated in less than an hour. It got destroyed. Bob was there. The apron was all messed up, and he was just dressed as casual as can be, looking random. Nothing about Bob screamed, I'm a preacher. Nothing. We eat. He grabs a guitar. He goes to sit down. And he comes, actually, before all that, he comes and he holds my shoulder. He says, Lonnie tells me some stuff about you. And I'm like, Lonnie, really, bro? like, I'm here as a guest, man. I didn't come here to guess. I came here as a guest. It's a big difference. And so he invited me to join the team. And what it really felt good was that I got to be in the back. It felt so good to just be behind everything. But when worship began, it literally felt awkward because it was actual worship. The thing I've been looking for forever was actually there in front of me, and it felt weird. This is how we can allow ourselves to, in our heads, and our hearts are so disconnected, that when we see what actual worship is, it scares the living daylights out of us as something, what is wrong with these people? Instead of someone sitting in a dark room looking at a stage and having people do something. This was a participatory thing. And it felt like you were brought into the activity. But Bob did not strike me as a preacher. Bob went on to expound on the word, and he went to talk about Jesus and his presence and pursuing Jesus and making sure that you make that your life goal. It was amazing, and it proved to me something about myself that I had been unaware of. For all intents and purposes, I had become religious. I became religious. I became a patent. I had a regimen of things I wanted to see done, and I became comfortable with the layout of the current church. I got comfortable in the hierarchy scheme. I got comfortable. And when that got shaken up by somebody who was just simply presenting Jesus and inviting everyone else to find him, it was awkward. It was not bad awkward in terms of I want to get out of here. It spoke to me. And this is why when I came back on Monday and I told you guys I had not slept that well in a long time, it's true. I had not. I had not felt that relaxed in a long time because I finally got one little chunk broken off of my heart and psyche that I've held on to that I didn't even know I had held on to because I was speaking against it. How could I hold on to it if I was speaking against it? This is how invasive the idea of putting yourself above God can be. When we've come to this body and we've come to Sunday morning and we allow other people to tell us what God is and you have no clue who God is yourself. It's a scary place to be. But it ended up being for me this refreshing of my spirit that I needed so desperately that even my face was feeling I could literally breathe. I mean, it was you could ask B. And I was talking about it the whole drive home, and it was just this peace I had not had in a really long time.
Wow.
Really long
So
time.
there's so much stuff that's going on in my brain, thinking about my journey over the last 40, 50 years in and out of church, religious organizations, or uh, state sanctioned 501c3s, and yet you find God's people in those places. And one of the things that happens as you grow and mature spiritually, and you are still interacting with those organizations, um, you will be shunned because you can't stand for it. You can't stand for the hypocrisy, for the religious organization taking the place of what the church is. And so it's a dichotomy. I mean, you still, it's like, I know this is where there's a lot of people in churches looking for God. Um, and so it's a really good mission field. It's a great place to be. It's a great place to serve. But at the same time, as you grow spiritually, as God equips you and brings you up into who he has created you to be, your interaction with religious organizations will not go well.
Mm-hmm.
You will be thrown out.
Hmm.
Then you got to find a new home. You got to find a place for fellowship. You've got to find a place for that interaction, that real stuff.
And that right there, the real.
Yeah.
We have to find the real. Now, if you watch the world, and we talked about where the church is today, is where the world was 20 years ago. And now the world is way ahead in their debauchery, but we're only following in their footsteps, it seems. Because we're not following God, we're trying to chase them to bring them to someone we think is God. We're never allowing God to take us to people. We don't allow for him to talk to us like he talked to Philip. And we don't allow him to talk to the ones that needs to hear him like he did the eunuch. Because he is just not that powerful anymore. And the modern iteration of a Christian does not see God as who he actually is. Okay, if I were to tell people, God can bring somebody from the backwoods of Australia to speak to somebody in rural Arkansas who had been seeking God, and that person in Australia just happened to have to need to take a trip to the United States. And the day that they land, they have to go through Arkansas to get to where they need to. And they just happen to have to stop at a gas station in that rural town in Arkansas. And they just happen to have to run into that one person. And they just happen to be able to have the hearing the voice of God say, go talk to that person, kind of like that guy in the car and you're trucking. If I tell people that's the kind of God I serve, majority of people were like, yeah, but that's a one-off. That's normal for God.
It is.
That is par for the course.
I need to add to my story. His name was Tab Morgan. I met with him a couple times shortly thereafter. He met with me when I would come through that part of the state when I was in my trucking activities. But then he disappeared, and I couldn't find him. And for years, I thought, I wonder if that was an angel, because I couldn't find him anywhere. And it was several decades later that I found him. He was a pastor down in Tri-Cities, and I told him what happened. The result of him pulling over that day. You know, one of the funniest things about that, he didn't remember it.
That makes sense.
He said, I used to do that all the time. God would always tap me on the shoulder and say, go speak to that person. And he would. He didn't even remember me. So long story short, he invited me to come down to his program. He did this thing on television. And I got to share my testimony with his folks. And he's still down there. He's aging, but he's one of the most loving men, I think, always just full of the love of God, and didn't even remember the encounter. But that was one of those things where he was driving, he was on his way to Seattle, had a show to do, and there's this truck pull. He could have stopped to talk to any of the other truckers, but no, it was me. It was that one right there, and that guy holding that hammer. He didn't have to be obedient to that, but he was, and the result, I don't even know how to measure how my life changed, and how the lives of people that I interact with have changed, and the world has changed because I got put back on the right path because of just a word, just somebody being obedient to one small thing.
His response to saying that he didn't remember tells me one very important thing. He was versed in listening. And each episode was just like the other. I'm just listening. He told me to do it. I'm doing it. Not one is more important than the other. Not one is going to stand out more, because it's not about what I take from it. It's about what he told me to go do.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why you don't remember a situation. It's not that it wasn't vital, but it wasn't for him. The one that it was vital to, the one that it was most profound for, is you. Because here's what really took place. That guy was always with God, talking to him. He spent time. He knew what his voice was. He knew when the unction came, and he followed every time that happened. It became habit for him, because he said he was in the habit of doing it. That was a normal thing. He said, go talk. I'm not even questioning. Go talk. You were just one more stop on his way of obedience to God. But for you, it was the needed experience of God presenting himself to you, saying, I still want to have a relationship with you. So much so that in your world, I'm using a complete stranger. But to God, that was his servant. That man was no stranger to God. He might have been a stranger to you, but he was no stranger to God.
The true story.
Right?
He couldn't say it better.
And so when he followed through with what God told him to do, you might have seen it as out of nowhere. God was like, out of nowhere. I've been prepping this guy for years to do justice. And trust me, you're not the only one. But for you, I used this situation to show you one important thing. You are not beyond my reach. You are not so far away that I can't just grab a random stranger, not even someone you know, from Timbuktu, bring them right where you are, do what needs to be done, and they can dip. The same thing. Like I said, it's a Philip thing. He came, he talked. How else would you find a dude just traveling on a road, randomly just parked somewhere, and you just happen to run up on him with exactly what he needed to hear, and not even seconds after you say and do what you need to be do, he's just gone. And
that's
they
that's
never said that the eunuch was shocked. This is the crazy part. The eunuch wasn't even shocked at that point. He wasn't even like, Philip disappeared, or where did he go? Nothing. He was just praising. The event itself took him before the throne, left him there, and that was Philip's job. The rest of it, now that eunuch knew God. We seem to want to have the kickback of saying, this individual brought me to God. And then the person will be like, yeah, I did. I was just doing my job, But y'all want to give me a plaque, I'll just make sure you engrave my name correctly and give me a special seat up front, and I'll keep doing it the best I can. That's how we are today. That's not the way the kingdom functions.
No, it is not.
When I have an itch on my chest, I don't care whether it's my right or my left hand scratches it. Whichever one gets there first scratches the itch. As long as the itch gets taken care of. I'm not going to be like, no, right hand. I know you're closer. Just hold on. I need my left leg to get that one. But your left leg doesn't bend that way. We'll make it bend that way. I'm not caring. The itch is solved. But we want to make all this stuff about us. The church is no longer, at least the presentation of what they call the church, is not about God. It's not about relationship, and it's not about what He's doing in your life. It is about you giving credit to the people you see. That's not church. It's not Christianity. That is man-made stuff. When God reaches you, you don't care how, you don't care when, you just care that He did.
That He did. Boy, how true is that?
And that's what I really wanted for you guys to hear, because I told Lonnie this, my journey really kicked off big time after meeting you. And it's not that I'm giving you this massive amount of credit, because the only way you could have had any impact was if you were always with him, talking to him. And the reason you were before him and talking with him, because somebody else did the exact same thing for you that you did for me. You showed up out of nowhere. Right? It's just one day. This is Lonnie. Who? Lonnie. Okay. And then look at us today. I would have never thought at that time that we would have the kind of connection we have as brothers. But when God sets something up, He sets it up permanently. The same thing I feel about Felton Baker. It's the same thing. And with Corey, random people from miles and miles away, they show up, and the only connection we have is who? God. The similarities we have is God. Lonnie likes outdoors. I prefer to be in a couch. He'll go hiking. I'll watch him hike. So we don't have that in common. But what we do have in common is a different journey that's taking us to a different mountaintop, and that's in God. And that's the only one that really is mattering, is the one that will eventually end in our life being with Him for eternity. What can they do to help with the school? What more do you guys need? Where are you at now with the need?
Sometimes I would say it's a scary place, but I've learned we're just doing what we're doing. Now we've got 20 people on staff. We've got over 200 students, and we still only have like 40 or 50 of them that are actually supported. So Kato's doing an incredible job over there. Go to the website at childsprayer.net and check it out. Maybe there's something that you'd like to be a part of. It's an incredible thing to be a part of something that's obviously God is doing this over there in this little village, Luquenga, poverty stricken. I can't even describe to you the abject poverty. It was just, I was wrecked. We would go into these homes, and they were just little shanties and people sleeping on the dirt, and all these children. And anyway, the need is great. And everything that happens over there happens locally. So when all the building projects, it's all been local people. And so Kato is busy building relationships and allowing God to shine through him and through Faith Heart School to everybody who participates in it, whether it's people that he hires to come in and slap mortar on bricks or whatever the project is. We're not proselytizing. Is that the right word? We're not over there trying to teach people to be like us. We're simply seeing that God is doing something and we're saying, go God.
Yeah. You're
Yeah,
an
it's
arm.
awesome.
You're an
And
arm.
I'd love to take you over there, dude.
Hey, I'd go.
I'd really, really, really would.
I'd go. You
It's a
guys
little,
can check out his YouTube page. This is it, LJ Good. I put the link in the comment section there. When this is all said and done, I'll have it in the description for you guys to go check it out. He does music. He's a ridiculously talented guitar player, and he sings really well too, by the way. But he's a multifaceted, talented guy. He does airplanes, and he knows a whole lot of stuff. Okay, he's what you call a seasoned man. But make sure you go check out his YouTube page because he does have a few things on there that are a great encouragement to the walk that we have as believers. Trust and believe that. And then this is the website for the childsprayer.net. Go check it out. You'll get all the updates, and you can, of course, see here the sponsor a child link is there, and you can keep up with everything that happens. I can tell you firsthand that none of this stuff is fanfare. You won't see it publicized as this great thing. Look at how amazing Lonnie is. That's not who he is. He's never been that way, not even from the day one that I've seen him and met him. He directs everybody to the throne. If you want to know who he is, go find out who God is, and you'll see God reflected in his life. And his wife, Teresa, is an amazing woman, just beautiful soul. She has been a rock for my wife because she's been one of those that will drag my wife back by the collar she has to bring her back on track. And that's what you need. You need people who can speak to you frank. This is not about being gushy and being, oh, good things will happen. If I have to grab you in a chokehold to drag you back, I will do that because I'm not going to be considered a friend if I'm just watching you flounder and watching you mess your life up, and I just look at you and say, well, you'll come back eventually. That's not love. That's hate. I have to hate you to let you keep living that much in despair and watch you and just say, eventually he'll come back. No. And Lonnie has done that for me. He may not see it as aggression, but I have talked to him, and he is no nonsense about God. And that is what drags people back to God, is that and this is why I like my platform here. People might think I'm belligerent and LJ Good. People might think I'm belligerent. I'm adamant about God. I don't need to apologize for him. I don't need to explain why he is the way he is. He just is the way he is, and you either accept it or you don't.
It's one of the attributes.
You don't get to decide how God operates. If he operates, that's not our role. He decides that, and we just have to go. People ask me, well, why would God allow? Because he can. Because he can. Why would God do that? Because he can. He's God. Whatever he deems necessary to do, guess what? He gonna do it. But if I don't know that about him, I will question every one of his motives. I will question every one of his acts. I will feel that I have the right, to question him, to put myself above him. What I don't want is God to show up like he did with Job. I'm not looking for it. I don't want that conversation in my I don't. I really don't want it. Who are you to question me? And then he goes on for 3 chapters talking to me about what he's done in comparison to what I've done. No, I'm good. I'm going to learn my lesson from Job and just assume that he knows everything, believe he knows everything, and follow like he knows everything, and not worry one time about questioning his will. I'm not going to. So people come here to this platform thinking I should have a discussion with. I'm not having a discussion when you're trying to ask me why I believe. I'll just tell you because I've seen enough, I've experienced enough, and I trust enough. That's all I need. I'm not trying to sugarcoat God, and I'm not trying to placate to people to bring them. If you just speak the simple gospel, God does the rest. He never asks you to convince. He never asks you to persuade. He asks you to what? Go out and preach the simple gospel.
Are you trying to suck me in on that one?
No, at all.
The simple gospel. There's one of my pet peeves that is because everything is the gospel. Yeah, everything has become the gospel, which it's. Let me break it down like this. When you talk about the gospel of Jesus Christ, you got to figure out if somebody's asking you about that. Are you asking me about Jesus's life, or are you asking me about what his story was, what his message was? His message was the gospel. You can say the gospel of Jesus, and you can just talk about his entire life. But when you're talking about what Jesus was talking about, Jesus talking about one thing: the kingdom of God has
Is at
come.
hand.
Decide if you want to be a part of it. Pure and simple. That was the gospel message that Jesus preached. He said, "This is why I came. That's why the Father sent me. I got to go over there and do it too, because this is why he sent me to preach. The kingdom has come."
And that's it. But we want to do it. We want to be extra. We gotta do more than God asked us to do because we special, right? No,
We
you're
want to
not
have our
special
own
like that.
kingdom.
Yeah, you're not that special. Don't get it twisted. You're not that big a deal, okay? You're not. You're simply not. Compared to God, which is what you're supposed to be standing before the throne. Before you, I am ashes. Before you, I am dust. Before you, I am filthy rags. When you know that, the sacrifice of the cross becomes way more impactful. People who think, "Oh, he only saved me from this was my big sin," and he saved me from my big sin. Everything else, I was okay. I was fine. Everything about us was rotten. Every single thing about us was rotten. He died for all of it, not the big sin that you might see, because you might think the big sin is the big sin you got, when actually the big sin is the one that you consider the small one. But it's all sin because you're all in one location. He's trying to take you to another one where none of that applies. So, for the future reference, if anybody is out there thinking that you need to apologize for God, don't. If you think you need to break him down to a level that people need to understand, you can't understand him on a human level anyway. So don't even try. Science can't explain him. Man can't explain him. No one can explain him. You either take him as he says he is, or you don't take him at all. That's how simple this is. He said his burden is light and his yoke is easy. And it is. Trust me and believe it's easy. But when we try to do stuff, it becomes difficult, because what you're actually doing is fighting the yoke. It's like having that oxen in the yoke and it's wanting to go another way when the farmer's saying, go one way. You start to rub, and you're rubbing and you start to get scarred, and you say, I'm done with this stupid yoke, and you throw it off. But if you just stay with the yoke, you won't get a scar on your neck. If you just follow it's right there. Just follow. He got you. Just do that. We have to have another discussion sometime soon, sir.
I would love to. Thank you
And
for having me on.
yeah, hey, like I said, like I told you, the journey God took you on, people need to hear that it is a miraculous one.
Yeah.
And what we see today is not
His
a true
love.
reflection of it. So
Reaching out for this dude right here, God's love it's real.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exponential.
And we just need to say, okay, I'll go your way. I'll go. Not backwards.
Amen.
I'll fall forward. Fall forward all day long. I don't care. Just keep going forward.
You'll get up in a different place than you were before.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple to me.
One body length.
So guys, remember, tomorrow I'm not on because I have my doctor's appointment tomorrow. I'm trying to see if Felton will be on Friday with me. I think we need to hear from more men of God and their journey into the heart of God, for people to understand that this is a journey to a person, not just randomly through earth. This is more than just that. We're trying to gain more of his presence in our life, so that at the end of our life, his actual presence will be exponentially more welcome. Thank you again, Lonnie, for being on and for sharing. I really do appreciate it. Appreciate you as a brother, friend. And I will be back out there, just probably not in the winter.
we had me and Captain, we went up the mountain yesterday. It was a great trip. I was thinking about you. I know that that's not your forte, but I'd love to take you up there.
Hey, I'll go up. Like I said, I have snowshoes now, but that's if I can avoid the snow, man, hey, but you know what? Knowing God, He gonna be like, now you going out in the snow. I'm gonna test your body so that you have to shut it down, and your want's not gonna be. Look, I can see it happening. I'm just
It
saying.
all thought out. It just snowed for that morning, and it's all gone again.
It was thought out before I got there too, right?
Yeah, just about.
Okay, so I'm just saying how he moves. He's like, now you're gonna endure that. I'm breaking off pieces of you. Just watch. So thank you again. And hopefully you guys went over there and checked this stuff out. We will one day have him back, and we got him over the 1K marker, which is good.
Yay!
Now you can actually get monetized on YouTube.
Whoa, are you serious?
Yeah.
I've been looking at that for years, man. I've been hanging out at like 970, 980 for years.
And you have enough view hours to get monetized. You have
No
you have
way.
the subscribership to do it too.
You have to tell me about that stuff.
Yeah, we will. We'll talk more about it. When it's easier when I get out there to talk about it and show you. So we'll do
thanks,
it for
Marlon.
sure. For sure.
Thanks for having me.
Like I said, nothing tomorrow. No Savage Patriots either. We're on a ban for 2 weeks, just so you guys understand that. And next week is an interesting week. I'm not going to tell you what's happening next week. Next week is a big surprise week, so you just look out for next week, all of you out there. And I don't know. I don't think I'll be doing any straight talks next week. I'm not sure yet. I'll let you know. And then Friday we're hoping to have Felton on. So we'll catch you guys then. Thank you again, Lonnie, for all that you allowed God to do in your life.
Thank you.
And for making sure that everyone sees it too. We will catch you guys on the flip side on Thursday. Remember, wisdom calls to you from the streets. So please, please, please find wisdom. Peace.
Hold tight the dreams, for if dreams die, rely on yourself in no way. Believe